On May 19, 2017, Chicago rapper and social media personality Lamanta Taito Reese replied to an insult about Mario Meatgate's mother with just a mocking smiley face emoji. What happened next shocked everyone who thought it was just a post. Here are 9 influencers who disrespected the wrong gangs.
¡Me dispararon! ¡Hermano! ¿Qué pasó?
June 20th, 2024. Gabriel Sarmiento is live on TikTok, ranting to thousands, when suddenly his mom screams as the sound of banging shakes the house and panic takes over. Out of fear, he blurts out his address, begging for help, never realizing it would mark the beginning of his end. The man at the center of that chaos was Gabriel Jesus Sarmiento, better known online as Unleaks, a 25-year-old TikTok creator with about 80,000 followers. He was known as a digital whistleblower who used his platform to call out Venezuela's darkest operations: police corruption, extortion, and the country's most feared gang, the Tren de Aragua. But how does a guy from a tough neighborhood end up making enemies so powerful they'd rather kill him than let him keep talking? Let's rewind. Gabriel grew up in Aragua State, a region infamous for gang activity. At first, his TikTok was lighthearted, local humor, everyday life, maybe a trending challenge or two. But as his audience grew, he leaned into bolder content. By the time he had more than 77,000 followers and over 1 million likes, his page had morphed into something far riskier, a stage for exposing corruption. Unlike other creators, Gabriel didn't pull punches. He called names, posted photos, and even accused police of running extortion rackets. He claimed he'd been kidnapped by a notorious police unit called DAT, Dirección de Acciones Estratégicas y Tácticas, and tagged Venezuela's interior minister and Aragua's governor directly in his posts. It wasn't entertainment anymore. He was an activist, raw and unfiltered. And then came his boldest move, going after Tren de Aragua, Venezuela's most powerful gang. This wasn't some small-time street crew. They run drug trafficking, human smuggling, and extortion rackets across Latin America. The U.S. has even labeled them a terrorist organization. Their leader, Héctor Guerrero Flores, known as Niño Guerrero, escaped during a 2023 raid that dismantled his prison fortress at Tocaron. To most people, even saying his name out loud is risky. But Gabriel, he mocked him publicly. He didn't just criticize the gang, he ridiculed their power, exposed their threats, and even shared messages he said came from their prison contacts. He accused Tren de Aragua of silencing critics through police allies, blurring the line between cops and criminals. He also took shots at rival groups like Tren del Llano, broadening his list of enemies. In short, Gabriel made himself a target the size of a billboard, and the threats poured in. But instead of hiding, he turned the warnings into content. He told his audience about the death threats, almost daring the people behind them to come forward. "Look at this," he'd say on camera, holding up evidence. "These guys think they're untouchable." That raw style resonated with everyday Venezuelans who felt powerless. Gabriel became a digital hero. But heroes, especially loud ones, rarely live long in places where the wrong words can be fatal. Which brings us back to that night in June. Gabriel was live, mid-rant, when chaos erupted. Gunmen burst into his home in El Piñonal, firing at least 9 shots. His mother was hit in the abdomen. Gabriel collapsed on camera, blood pooling as he pleaded for help. The stream ended abruptly, but clips spread across social media like wildfire. Venezuela's Attorney General Tarek William Saab quickly announced a probe. The 69th Prosecutor's Office was assigned to hunt down those responsible. Within days, police arrested Fiorina Uribari, the partner of alleged shooter Adrian Romero, charging her with homicide, criminal association, and terrorism. Warrants were issued for Romero himself and 2 other suspects, Wilbert Gonzalez and Gerald Nieto. Authorities hinted at Tren de Aragua links, but were careful not to say too much, leaving plenty of suspicion about whether this was purely gang retaliation, a police cover-up, or both. What's certain is that Gabriel's murder was more than a crime. It is a reminder of the deadly price of speaking truth in a country where gangs and corrupt officials blur into one.
Ariela Mejia Polanco was gunned down 8 days ago while driving her Mercedes SUV on the Cross County Parkway in Mount Vernon.
August 17, 2025, in Mount Vernon, New York. The police responded to a routine call about a parked vehicle on the Cross County Parkway and made a disturbing discovery. Inside a white Mercedes SUV, they found the body of a woman who had been shot in the head. An influencer known for New York's nightlife was found inside the SUV, her designer outfit stained with blood, and the car engine was still running when the police arrived. The bullet holes made clear what had just happened, and investigators quickly confirmed the case was being treated as a homicide, that it wasn't an accident, it was a hit. Slumped behind the wheel was Ariela Mejia Polanco, better known to her thousands of Instagram followers as La Langosta. Ariela wasn't your average influencer posting brunch plates and vacation selfies. She had a presence in the lounges of Inwood and the clubs of Manhattan. She was the one holding down VIP, popping bottles, brushing shoulders with hip-hop royalty. She belonged in the front row and online. Yet she was tied to Daniel Hernandez, better known as Tekashi 69, who made some of the deadliest enemies anyone could imagine. Rainbow hair, face tattoos, screaming ad-libs. Shot to fame in 2017 with Gummo, Tekashi 69 was aligned with the 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods, a violent subset of the Bloods gang out of New York. Then came 2019 when the feds came knocking with racketeering charges that could have kept him locked up for decades. He made a surprising decision instead of standing tall. He sat in a courtroom and snitched, pointing fingers at his old crew. His testimony chopped his sentence down to 2 years. And by 2020, thanks to COVID house arrest deals, he was free. Which brings us back to Ariela. She wasn't just his friend. She was not just showing up at the same parties. She was his ride or die. But here's the catch. In gangland, perception is reality. And to the 9 Trey and other crews, her flaunting that lifestyle looked like rubbing salt in their wounds. Was she personally dissing them? Reports suggest she cooperated during the 2019 trial. But even without that, being the public face of Tekashi's post-trial life put her squarely in the crosshairs. Think about it. These gangs don't always go after the main target. Most times it's easier and just as effective to hurt the people closest to them, especially when they can't always touch the snitch hiding under federal protection. But you can make him suffer by striking his loved ones. And that's exactly the theory investigators are chasing right now. So, what happened on that morning? According to Westchester County authorities, Ariela wasn't robbed, nothing was stolen, and her Mercedes was untouched. Someone had pulled up, opened fire, and left her riddled with bullets, pure execution style, and in seconds the business was done. Her 500,000+ followers went into shock. One day they were double-tapping her glamorous posts. The next they were flooding her page with RIP messages. Friends and fans lit candles, held vigils, and plastered the hashtag Justice for La Langosta across social media. Celebrities chimed in too, like Cardi B, another Dominican powerhouse out of NYC, who mourned her publicly, calling her a real one. But on the street, whispers spread fast. Was this 9 Trey finally sending a message years after Tekashi's betrayal? Was the Dominican crew tied to the NYC drug scene, angry about old beef? Or was it someone even closer, someone inside her circles who felt burned? Nobody's sure yet, and as of now the police haven't named any suspects. What they have confirmed is this: it was targeted, and Ariela's ties to Tekashi can't be ignored. May 23, 2017 in Englewood, Chicago, 22-year-old rapper and social media personality Lamanta Tayeto Reese, known online as Tayeto da Shuda, was shot and killed while sitting on a porch. It wasn't some random act of violence. His death traced back to something most people wouldn't think twice about, like the normal back and forths on Chicago's social media scene. It started small, a simple post, and a reply. Nothing unusual. However, in the streets of Chicago, these exchanges aren't just harmless words on a screen. When Tato responded to an insult about Mario Meek Gates' mother with nothing but a mocking emoji, it struck a nerve deeper than he likely imagined. Tato wasn't an ordinary Facebook user either. He was a part of Chicago's rising drill rap scene, a member of the Black Disciples, and someone who used YouTube and Twitter to share music while flashing his gang ties. His Twitter alone had over 28,000 posts, bold, raw, and unfiltered. To fans, he was entertaining. To rivals like the Gangster Disciples, everything he posted was ammunition. On the outside, it seemed silly. Why would an emoji push things over the edge? In Chicago's gang culture, public disrespect is a line you don't cross. Because when you do, there are consequences. That's why this particular emoji mattered so much. So when Meek Gates fired off an insult about Tato's mother, and Tato fired back with that infamous smiley face, it wasn't just a petty online spat. It was war talk. Researchers have even pointed out that online cyber banging can raise the risk of real-life gang violence by 20–30%. Tato's post fit the mold perfectly. It wasn't just content. It was a provocation. Tato wasn't the type to back down. Like many drill rappers, he built his persona around fearlessness. His followers expected rawness, and he gave it to them. To his supporters, his clapbacks were proof he wasn't scared of anyone. Chicago already knows what happens when online taunts spill into the streets. Countless rappers had been killed in feuds started by social media. Tato knew that history, but silence wasn't an option. In drill culture, silence looks like weakness, and weakness gets exploited. So he kept posting and mocking rivals, dropping captions that were like warnings. Finally, that smiley face emoji aimed at Meek Gates. To fans, it was savage. May 19, 2017. Tato was on a porch in Englewood when a car rolled up. Shots rang out, bullets hit and killed him. Police later confirmed what most people already suspected, that his death was gang-related, and his Facebook post had played a role in setting it off. For Chicago, the cycle was painfully familiar. The rivalry between Black disciples and Gangster disciples had been locked in for decades, and each generation inherited the grudges of the last. Drill music only magnified them. May 18, 2015, Shaquan Young Pappy Thomas was walking through Washington Park on Chicago's South Side. His track, Killa, was climbing toward 2 million views on YouTube, a song where he didn't just rap, but openly mocked fallen gangster disciples by name. He was part of the Polo Boys gang, a set loosely tied to the Black disciples, and his music regularly took shots at their rivals, the Gangster Disciples. Social media gave Pappy a bigger stage. YouTube made him a star, while Twitter and Facebook let him keep the beef going in real time. This was the era when cyber banging just became a thing, gang wars moving from street corners to smartphone screens. For his fans, this made him exciting, raw, and real. He even posted personal stuff, sometimes giving away his location. Unknown to him that for his rivals, it was like handing them a roadmap. By 2015, warnings and threats from the other side were stacking up. That night, it all caught up to him as Pappy walked along the 4,800 block of North Kenmore Avenue in Chicago's uptown neighborhood around 1:35 a.m. when a car rolled up and a gunman wearing a gray hoodie shot young Pappy in the back with 2 bullets, then fled in a black car. Pappy was rushed to Illinois Masonic Medical Center, where he succumbed to his injuries. What's striking is how normal all this felt to Pappy and his peers. Dropping diss tracks, posting taunts online. He wasn't the first, and sadly, he wasn't the last. Different names, same pattern. His music is still online. Killa still racks up streams, a reminder of the line he walked between stardom and survival. Young Pappy's story shows just how thin that line can be when every lyric and every post has the power to get you killed.
And then we got a video sent through to us off Instagram page of these kids going through the car and stealing everything.
July 13th, 2021 in Gold Coast, Australia. Troy Williams, better known as Candyman 2.0, picked up his phone and froze. A video was blowing up on Instagram, tagged straight to his account, and in it was a group of masked kids, barely teenagers, laughing as they ransacked his pregnant girlfriend Anita's $130,000 Mercedes. They waved his designer shades, tried on his watches, and even flipped the camera off. For a guy like Troy, who lived to show off, that was a nightmare. His empire was built on expensive cars, pool parties, and the image that nothing could touch him until now. In one video, kids had made him look weak. But this didn't just happen out of the blue. In March 2021, Troy was already stirring trouble, feeling untouchable, as he had just dodged serious charges from a dangerous driving incident at a car meet. He went on Instagram and started ranting, calling out, Punk kids ruining the coast, mocking the teen gangs who had been breaking into homes, stealing cars, and showing off their crimes online. When he got home in front of his row of supercars, he dared them. "You little rats think you're gangsters. Come try that at my place. See what happens." But the kids he was mocking took it personally. These small youth crews, who call themselves the Coast Shadows, were reckless yet bold. They resented how Troy flaunted his wealth while they struggled to get by in the suburbs. Then, his rant lit a fire, and they were waiting for the perfect chance to strike back. That chance came in July, when Anita went for a prenatal checkup. The crew spotted her Mercedes, broke in, and took everything from bags, jewelry, Troy's custom merch, and even her ultrasound photo. And instead of hiding, they filmed the whole thing and posted it to Troy's page.
And they knew who we were because they tagged us when they stole it and said, "Got your stuff, Troy Candy."
It wasn't just a robbery. One of them even shouted, "This is for the disrespect, Candy. Gold Coast owns you now. You disrespect us. We disrespect you." Hours later, Troy fired back. He went online in a close-up video showing his arms covered in tattoos, voice steady but cold. He put up a $5,000 reward for info on the thieves. His followers quickly sent tips, screenshots of accounts, names of kids, and even license plate numbers. And within a day, Troy knew exactly who was behind it. But instead of calling the police, Troy made a choice to handle it himself. By July 15th, he tracked the crew down to a park in Coomera, where they usually hung out. Troy rolled up in a black Lamborghini with a couple of his big mates from the car scene without guns, no fists. But he wasn't playing. He stepped out and barked, "You boys thought that was funny?" The kids scattered, but a few were cornered and under pressure. They handed back most of what they'd stolen. One boy, the ringleader, didn't flinch. He was just 15 years old with freshly inked tattoo. He stared Troy down and muttered, "This ain't over, Candy. You dissed us first. We'll hit harder next time." For the moment, things calmed down. Troy got his stuff back and even tried to spin the story into a lesson. Troy shared the moment online, warning young people not to waste their lives on crime. It almost looked like the drama was behind him, but the whispers didn't stop. By late 2021, anonymous accounts started trolling Troy, leaking what they claimed was his new address, posting threats and bragging about slashing his tires at car meets. Many believed it was the same group of kids. Then, in early 2022, Troy's house was raided by police on drug possession charges. Rumors spread that the tip-off had come from them. They had their payback for the embarrassment he'd caused. By 2023, he had launched his own energy drink, G-Up, partied with big-name businessmen like Adrian Portelli, and welcomed a boy with Anita. And for the first time, he had been reminded that he wasn't as untouchable as he thought by a kid gang. At the end of the day, Troy's story shows what happens when ego and the streets collide. He wanted to prove he couldn't be touched, and in doing so, painted a massive target on himself. Those kids weren't hardened criminals, but they were daring enough to take a shot at someone bigger than them. And for a brief moment, they succeeded. Troy Williams is still around, still living the lifestyle, calling himself Candyman 2.0. But deep down, he knows the sting of being checked, and he knows that no matter how bright you shine online, there's always someone waiting in the shadows. September 24th, 2011 in Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. A note was found on the mutilated body of a woman sprawled across the ground around the Christopher Columbus Monument, with a computer keyboard horrifically placed on her head, wires spilling out like veins. The note read, "Okay, Nuevo Laredo en vivo and social media sites. I am Nena de Laredo, and I'm here because of my reports and yours. For those who don't believe this happened to me because of my actions, thank you for your attention. La Nena de Laredo." Zzz. Those Z's, that's the calling card of Los Zetas, a ruthless cartel in the region. And this wasn't just another killing in a city plagued by them. It was a statement, loud and clear. If you talk about us online, this is your fate. For context, La Nena de Laredo was Marisol Macias Castañeda, away from the internet. She was 39 years old, the managing editor of Primera Hora, a small local newspaper. A respected professional, but like most reporters in Tamaulipas, she avoided writing about the cartels in print. Why? Because everyone knew what happened to journalists who did. By night, she became La Nena de Laredo, an active voice on Nuevo Laredo and Vivo, a citizen journalism forum where anonymous users warned neighbors about shootouts, cartel checkpoints, and safe routes home. Think of it like a digital survival map in a city where the press had been silenced and official channels were useless. Back then, Nuevo Laredo was one of the bloodiest hotspots in northern Mexico. Just across the river from Laredo, Texas, it was prime turf for Los Zetas, a cartel that is more than just into drugs. They are made up of former Special Forces soldiers who had gone rogue, warlords, heavily armed, brutally organized, and hungry for absolute control. They didn't just traffic cocaine or extort businesses. They thrived on terror. Their goal wasn't simply to make money, it was to dominate every corner of life, and that meant silencing anyone who spoke out. La Nena didn't just post vague warnings, she mocked Los Zetas directly, urging others to expose their movements and calling them rats. Her posts were full of determination. Keep reporting. Soon these rats will fall. She encouraged neighbors to keep tipping off the Army and the Navy, sharing intel that could save lives. For ordinary citizens, she was a lifeline. For the Zetas, she was a problem, a real challenge, because every post La Nena made gave them out and made them look vulnerable, disrupting their operations. But on September 23, 2011, they abducted her. The next day, they staged her brutal murder in the most public way possible. Her head on the keyboard wasn't random. It was a symbolic punishment for using the internet against them. And the note? It forced her online identity to confess, as if, even in death, she was being made to admit defeat. Surprisingly, La Nena wasn't the first. Just 2 weeks earlier, on September 13, 2011, two people, a man and a woman, were found hanging from an overpass in Nuevo Laredo. Their crime was being internet snitches. A sign pinned to them warned others to stop reporting cartel activity on social media. By the end of 2011, at least 4 online citizen reporters in Nuevo Laredo had been brutally killed. Los Zetas weren't just controlling the streets before La Nena's murder. People thought being anonymous online kept them safe. But after her, forums went silent, people logged off, and everyone realized a username couldn't protect them. Fear spread like wildfire. Even the bravest realized that if the Zetas wanted you, a username wouldn't save you. Globally, her incident caught attention as UNESCO condemned it, human rights groups called for better protections, and journalists worldwide started asking how they could keep citizen reporters safe. For people in Nuevo Laredo, La Nena's death wasn't just another headline, it was proof that no form of speaking out was safe. It could get you killed, even with good intentions. She was simply trying to protect her community, and that alone made her a target. In October 2011, videos started circulating of masked figures promising to expose the Zetas' entire network. Anonymous launched an operation, Op Cartel, where they claimed one of their members had been kidnapped by the Zetas in Veracruz, and warned they would reveal cartel operatives and even their political allies if their comrade wasn't released. The Zetas, in response to their threats, hired a hacker and, in turn, threatened to kill 10 civilians for every name leaked. Anonymous ultimately pulled back after their member was released, but the episode stirred paranoia, as local bloggers like those on Nuevo Laredo and Vivo suddenly looked like part of the same online rebellion. Even if they weren't connected to Anonymous, the timing made their posts feel like a digital uprising against the cartel, and the Zetas were itching to make an example. On November 9, 2011, the city of Nuevo Laredo woke up to another nightmare. Just near the Christopher Columbus Monument, pedestrians froze at the sight in front of them. A body lay dumped in the open, mutilated, decapitated, and staged in a way that made it impossible to ignore. A computer keyboard and headphones had been staged nearby, giving it a twisted, theatrical touch. But what terrified people the most wasn't just the gore. It was the handwritten message pinned beside him like a caption. "Hello, I'm Rascat Tripas, and this happened to me because I didn't understand that I shouldn't report things on social networks." For most outsiders, the name meant nothing, but inside Nuevo Laredo, the word Rascat Tripas sent shockwaves because it is a Spanish nickname for gut scratcher, and that word was tied to the underground world of online citizen reporting. For months, locals had been turning to anonymous forums like New Laredo Live to stay one step ahead of danger. Mainstream newspapers were paralyzed by fear. Reporters who dared to cover cartel violence were threatened, kidnapped, or killed. So ordinary people stepped in, using nicknames. They logged into forums to warn each other. Don't go down this street. There's a shootout. Avoid this block. The Zetas set up a checkpoint. Someone just got kidnapped near this store. It was crude, grassroots reporting for survival, and the cartels despised it. They feared that if ordinary people could go online and share information, then power had slipped from their hands. Even if Rascatripas never called names or revealed secrets, just pushing back against silence was enough to humiliate them. And in cartel logic, humiliation demands blood. His death became part of their playbook with similar symbols from the previous ones. A note, a body, which turned out the way they wanted. Suddenly, the internet went quiet. People who once warned neighbors logged off. Others deleted their accounts. The most disturbing part? Rascatripas may not have even been the blogger the Zetas claimed. He might never have posted a word against them, but in cartel territory, disrespect isn't always about insults. Sometimes it's simply pressing post, and for that, a man lost his life.
Una chinga. No sé qué gorra ponerme. Estas de Hash Club. Son las que más me han gustado, están muy vergas.
August 16, 2025, in Temixco, Morelos, Camilo Ochoa, better known as El Alucin, was picking out clothes in his house, recording a casual Instagram video, laughing about how stuffed his wardrobe was. And then minutes later, a gunman stormed through the front door, and the rest was history. The news spread really fast as thousands of people had watched his video hours before. Now, headlines were saying he'd been executed in his own home. Camilo wasn't some kid who stumbled into YouTube fame. He came from money. His family built El Pollo Loco, the grilled chicken chain that grew from Sinaloa to the U.S. By his early 20s, he was working in the business, living comfortably. But in 2004, everything changed. He was kidnapped by Los Zetas and held hostage for 7 days until his family paid ransom. Most people would take that as a warning to stay far away from cartel life, but Camilo didn't. Instead, he got hooked and went deeper, dabbling in drug trafficking and chasing connections in Colombia. By 2014, he wasn't just experimenting. He had become a plaza boss in Mazatlan, managing territory for the Sinaloa cartel under Damaso Lopez Núñez, known as El Licenciado. But the Sinaloa cartel wasn't united after El Chapo's arrest. Factions started splitting. Camilo leaned toward El Chapo's sons, Los Chapitos, and that decision would haunt him for the rest of his life. In 2015, Camilo got caught with a military-grade weapon and was sentenced to 7 years in prison. While he was there, reports say El Licenciado, once his ally, ordered his death through El Mayito Flaco, son of El Mayo Zambada, as the attempt failed and Camilo survived, served his time, and walked out in 2022 with a new mission. His father was ill. His daughters begged him to quit cartel life, and he claimed he was done with the old ways. So he turned to social media. On YouTube and Instagram, he reinvented himself as El Alucin, the hallucination, the storyteller, where he shared wild tales about kidnappings, deals gone wrong, and the codes of old-school narcos. People loved the inside scoop. He gained thousands of followers, mixing storytelling with style and charisma. He didn't just share experiences, he started throwing shade directly at La Mayiza, the faction loyal to El Mayo and his son, Mayito Flaco. In podcasts and Instagram rants, he blasted them for being savage and for abandoning the so-called values of older narcos. In one video, which was the last one he posted on the day he died, he accused Mayito Flaco of refusing to spare 2 minors during an attack, one of them autistic, and contrasted that with El Mayo, who, despite cooperating with U.S. authorities, at least try to keep peace. By mid-2025, things got serious. Flyers were literally dropped from planes over Culiacan with a blacklist of 25 names. On it were Peso Pluma, Marquitos Toys, and yes, El Alucin. The message stated that these people were Chapitos puppets and needed to be cut off. Then the warnings came. Several El Pollo Loco restaurants were targeted in Nuevo León, and Camilo knew what it meant. In interviews, he admitted that he was already targeted and begged authorities to act, saying the government would only care when something happens to someone important. Well, that didn't stop him from posting. He kept going live, kept mocking, kept talking. One would think maybe it was confidence, denial, or the same adrenaline that pulled him into cartel life years earlier. Either way, he didn't back down. And then came August 16, 2025. Camilo dressed well, recorded casually, laughed about his wardrobe, and hours later, gunmen broke in. He ran to the bathroom, but it was too late. Right in front of his wife, the attack had unfolded. Multiple shots ended his life on the spot. 6 others from that blacklist were already dead by then, including the brother of influencer Marquitos Toys. The streets quickly whispered what everyone already believed. That was settling scores. After his death, his channels went silent. Fans argued online about bravery and recklessness, and others were confused about whether he was just exposing truths or just chasing views. Whichever it is, the cartels don't play by internet rules. To them, Camilo wasn't an influencer. He was a man running his mouth, dragging their names into the spotlight, and mocking them in front of the world. And that kind of disrespect doesn't stay online.
Papas, yo te pongo a traer lo que sea la verga. Así que el Mencho a mí me pela la verga.
In 2017, the noise of a bar in Zapopan, Jalisco, was suddenly broken as gunmen from the Jalisco New Generation Cartel's elite group walked in. Within seconds, they opened fire on a teenager who had thought he was untouchable. That teenager was Juan Luis Lagunas Rosales, better known to the world as El Pirata de Culiacan. Juan was born in Navolato, Sinaloa, and grew up in tough circumstances. His parents left early in his life, and he was raised by his grandmother. School didn't hold him. By 15, he had dropped out and was washing cars in Culiacan to survive. Somewhere in that chaos, he found a different path: social media. His wild clips, guzzling liquor, cracking crude jokes, stumbling through house parties, were raw, funny, and instantly shareable. Fans saw him as a rebel who had no fear, someone who lived the life they only joked about. Online, the kid from Navolato became a symbol of defiance. He had over 1 million followers on Facebook and another 300,000 on Instagram, and his fans loved watching him shout catchphrases like "Puro Pirata" while chugging whiskey straight from the bottle. On the surface, it looked like nothing more than a teenager having wild fun online. But in Mexico, that kind of recklessness comes with limits. Juan wasn't just entertaining, he was brushing up against narco culture. And then one night during a live stream, he pushed it too far. Drunk and laughing, Juan mentioned the name no one dared to speak about: Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho, leader of the CJNG. El Mencho was not just another cartel boss, he was one of Mexico's most feared men, controlling a violent organization responsible for thousands of deaths. Yet El Pirata, slurring his words, mocked him directly. "El Mencho a mí me pela la verga," a crude insult aimed at the cartel kingpin. It was the kind of thing a teenager would say to sound tough online, not realizing what it means in the real world. On that night in December, Juan was drinking with friends at Mentados Cantaros bar. Witnesses recalled a black truck pulling up and several armed men entering the place. In seconds, bullets tore through him. Reports say he was hit at least 15 times. The bar manager was also critically wounded, but Juan was dead before anyone could react. As he was identified later by his tattoos, news of his killing spread as fast as his viral videos, and social media exploded with shock, memes, and endless theories. Some insisted it was a direct hit ordered by El Mencho, punishment for the insult. Authorities, as usual, gave few answers, but to his fans and to anyone watching, the lesson was brutally clear. In a place where cartel power is absolute, mocking the wrong man is no joke. What makes this story even more tragic is how young El Pirata was, a kid barely old enough to drive, yet he had millions of views and fans egging him on. He embodied a culture where fame and money seemed worth any risk, even when that risk meant provoking the deadliest criminals in Mexico.